On today's episode of Locked On Angels, a follow-up to the missed squeeze bunt attempt from Tuesday night's game. Who's to blame? Is there blame? Should we just move on? There's some layers to this that we're going to dig through, and we're going to dig through together. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you want to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe. Become a Locked On Everydayer with us. And whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply.
Thank you for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Mike, we've been fans of this team for years, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to be hosting Locked On Angels, talking Angels baseball Monday through Friday. A lot of people said, doesn't it suck to cover this team that sucks right now? And I said,
yes.
No. Like, yes, it does. Listen, we started this as a hobby, and we got to come to Locked On Angels, and we get to work together. So it's a pleasure.
This is the most I've seen you in the last 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Across a screen.
That's right. Hey, on today's show, we're going to recap last night's 7-2 win. Of course, we'll get to that in segment 2. And what would we do with the Angels pitchers who are struggling to throw a first pitch strike? We'll talk about that. But first, Mike, we got to go back to Tuesday night, because you and I are quick to record our show right after the game. However, while we were recording, we got some tweets and we got some messages that were like, did you guys see the press conference from Ron Washington? So let's get into that right now. Why don't you give us a little recap of what happened?
Okay, so there's been a lot of conversation about the failed squeeze play from Tuesday night's game. If you missed it, bases loaded, and Guillorme was up, and he went to bunt. It was a squeeze. Neto was coming down from third base. The ball was way outside, and he missed it, so Neto was out. And so we felt like it was important to talk about that moment, because Wash put all of the blame on Guillorme. He put all of the blame, and he said in the press conference afterwards, he didn't do the job. It wasn't anything I did wrong. He didn't do the job. And what it's worth, John, for what it's worth, the pitch that was thrown by Ramiro, the lefty that was on the mound for the Cardinals, was way, way outside. Wash said that he called the squeeze because he wanted to avoid a double play with a lefty-lefty sinker baller. Wash also said that the pitcher was throwing the ball in the strike zone. When he was asked about that, he says, why are you making excuses?
Yes.
He was throwing the ball in the zone.
I want to make sure you got the hand slapping on the table, because, and for everybody who criticizes Sam Blum, that wasn't a Sam Blum question.
No.
That was a Jeff Fletcher question. Jeff said, what are you doing in that situation? He said, why are you giving him excuses? He was throwing strikes.
So let's just be clear about what had happened. Ramiro had just walked the last two batters.
Yes.
He was all over the place. At that point, John, after he threw that pitch and Guillorme missed it, Ramiro had thrown 14 balls and 12 strikes. So he was not in the zone. That was inaccurate. In fact, we have a graphic. If you're watching on the YouTube side, you can see where his pitches were when he was in this.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm counting the dots outside the zone. No, I'm just kidding.
So he threw 31 pitches total, John, and 15 of them were out of the zone. So he was about 50%. So he was not throwing strikes. Wash's point, though, was that Guillorme didn't get the bunt down, period. Now, Guillorme was asked about this attempted failed bunt, and he responded with, I haven't seen what Wash said. The guy made a good pitch. I didn't get it down. I've got to try to put the bat down. That's it.
He wore it.
So I love that he wore it. I'm sure that they probably talked about it. Next day, which was yesterday, Wash was asked about it again, and Wash said, I said what I said. I still feel the same way. So before we respond to this, I think it's really important to share two what I would call, and I think most people would call, knowledgeable baseball people who responded to this. The first is Jeff Fletcher, friend of the pod, been on the pod. He tweeted something I thought was really interesting. He said this, I'm going to read it. Did a little research to see how Guillorme was, how likely it was for Guillorme to get this bunt down. The pitch was 1.56 feet outside and 1.91 feet high. Since 2021, there have been 50 bunt attempts on pitches at least 1.5 feet outside, not counting times when the hitter pulled back and it was a ball. 7 of them were put in play, 14%. 20 of them were foul, 40%. 23 of them were missed, 46%. Of the 7 in play, only 1 was lower than 2 feet high. That one was from a right-handed hitter on an 81-mile-an-hour curve. Now, Guillorme faced an 85-mile-per-hour slider. So basically all this means is 1.5 feet from the center of the plate, not the edge of the plate, and 18 inches from the center of the plate is 9.5 inches from the edge of the plate. And so the overall numbers are still the same. So he said that the success rate, according to the math that he did, was just 14% on the. So that was Jeff Fletcher's tweet. Then Victor Rojas, who did the Angels play-by-play for many years and does the Angels Win podcast, a really great, knowledgeable guy. He said there's a lot to unpack here, but simply stated, I believe Wash was in the wrong in this instant. He's literally correct in that his player didn't do the job.
Sure.
But given the circumstances and assuming we're all watching the same game unfold, Wash is the one who put him in that position to fail. So, John, there's layers to this conversation. First, there's the call to bunt because the offense hasn't been good, right? And I've been a big advocate of like, we need to move runners over. Let's bunt, right?
Yeah.
There's the decision to make the call to bunt when the pitcher is struggling. Wash said he wasn't. Everybody else, well, most everybody else has said that he is.
And the data shows that he was. Let me throw this up one more time. Yes.
Yes.
This is the sign of a struggling pitcher, everybody.
Yes. Yes. And there's the miss bunt attempt, right?
Yeah.
And everybody brought up, David Eckstein reaching out, stepping across back in 2002, and then Eric Ibar throwing his bat to try to get the bunt, right? Like, yes, that would have been nice to see as well. And then there's Wash calling the player out. So, Johnny, where would you like to start? I'm going to let you have the floor.
I want to start with Wash calling out Guillorme, and it just really upset me that he was like, I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
And then he doubled down on the fact that he was throwing strikes, and he wasn't. And just how you don't read that situation. Look, it's one circumstance that cost us a game in a game full of losing, in a season full of losing games, Mike. So at the end of the day, we're not going to remember this in a week, right? But the fact is, like, I agree with Victor. Guillorme literally didn't do his job, right? And everybody was saying, well, you got to get it no matter what. You got to do it no matter what. I posted that tweet of Guillorme trying to hit the ball across the Grand Canyon because that's what it looked like to me. Yeah. But the fact is, I was very disappointed and it was not a good look for Ron Washington in that press conference to throw Guillorme under the bus. And look, I don't have an attachment to Guillorme. He just got here, right?
Right.
I did make a wisecrack about the fact that he had 2 walks in last night's game and the fact that, he can handle the bat and he can take the walk. So that's neither here nor there. But Mike, can I just clarify something? Everybody seems to think that this is some sort of turning point where everybody's turning on Wash, making him out to be the bad guy, doing this and that and the other. Here's the thing. And I tweeted this yesterday. You and I still believe that Ron Washington is the right manager for this team. Yeah. We still believe that there's nobody better to be around these young guys than Ron Washington. This doesn't have to do with the talent on the team. This doesn't have to do with the fact that he's been, given AAA players who are actually doing a pretty good job, by the way, in Calhoun and Pilar and whatnot. This has nothing to do with that. This has everything to do with the fact that he's held players accountable before. He's held Joe Adell accountable for not taking second base when he should have and overrunning it. He's held Nolan Schanuel accountable for not sliding in at home. And we've appreciated that. We have been like, man, how refreshing is it to hear Ron Washington speak about the mistakes that his young players are making rather than Phil Nevin going, well, we like him in that spot. Yeah, we really like him in that spot. That tells us nothing. Especially after the media embargo the Angels put on most of the people last year, that their coaches and their staff couldn't talk to any players or any beat writers. It had to be all through Phil Nevin. It's refreshing that Ron Washington has given such honest conversations, but he messed up.
Yeah.
And he messed up making that call last night. There's no reason why a struggling pitcher on the mound should even be bailed out by the squeeze play. You assume, I would have assumed that he would have walked Guillorme and walked in a run. Mike, even JD over at Locked On Cardinals was like, Ron Washington put on a squeeze play when the pitcher can't even hit the zone? Like, yeah. JD benefited from it, and he's just like, I don't understand this at all. I really encourage you guys to go watch JD's episode from yesterday, because from the Cardinals' perspective, it's hilarious. And he even was like, thank you, Ron Washington, for bailing him out. And that's really what it comes down to, Mike. Both things can be true. Ron Washington can be the right guy in the right situation and the right job. He has had 50 years of experience, and he's influenced players all throughout his career. We're still hyped on him. I know that the record is not great, but that comes down to a talent issue, and that comes down to a roster issue. And the fact is, Ron Washington is the right guy to be around these guys. And I think he's going to have long-term effects on their careers. Like, Hoppy. You saw Zach Neto hop in to the dugout last night after his home run and get next to Wash and go, hey, what'd you think of that, Wash? You know what I mean? Because he's a good influence on these guys.
Yeah.
And I think he totally failed in his press conference. And I also think that he totally failed reading the room and reading the situation. Mike, for as much as you and I criticize the players for not reading the room and reading the situation and trying to go opposite or not trying to pull everything when a pitcher is struggling, you know what I'm saying? Ron Washington is just as susceptible to that criticism as well. And I don't appreciate that he put himself above that last night. Or the night before, I guess.
And that's where I struggled with it. I mean, the call was frustrating because Romero was struggling. What made it really frustrating was him saying in response to Jeff Fletcher, why are you making excuses? The pitcher was in the zone. And everybody else was like, nah, man, the pitcher was not in the zone. And the reason why this felt even more weighty is because you and I have been talking pretty often, and we've had everydayers tweet at us, why do the Angels keep helping out struggling pitchers?
Yeah.
Most of the time, if not every time, it's been a hitter coming up, guys walk the bases loaded, and then the first pitch, they're swinging and they pop it up in the infield, right? And so this felt like that 2 nights ago on Tuesday. This felt like Wash doing what the Angels hitters have done. And that was the only issue that we had with Wash, that I had with Wash. I thought it was a bad call. I was surprised that he doubled down like he did. I was surprised because that seems very unwashed-like. But also, I learned something. Apparently something happened with Nelson Cruz and the Texas Rangers when Wash was there. Because a bunch of people tweeted us who have been Rangers fans and have said, oh, man, let me tell you about this story. So I didn't get all the details, but I found it fascinating that there were Rangers fans from years ago that were like, oh, yeah, we've been through this as well. Let me tell you the Nelson Cruz story. And
he left Nelson Cruz in the outfield, and he had Andy Chavez on the bench and could have used him as a defensive replacement. And Nelson Cruz not getting to the ball was why St. Louis won the World Series. Honestly, Mike, it's St. Louis. There's just something that gets in the Ron Washington.
Cards.
Yes, exactly. The fact is, Mike, I think that was a boiling point for him. Yeah. I understand his frustration.
He was frustrated. Absolutely. I get it. And being on this team, and who knows what he was promised. And he wasn't promised this team, right? He was promised a healthy team, but now he's coaching a team that he probably doesn't even recognize.
Yeah.
And I could see him being frustrated. And I don't judge him for that at all. The dude can be frustrated. I would rather have him been frustrated in that moment going, man, I called it and he missed it and it was a bad pitch and the pitcher was all over the zone. I'm trying to help out our guys, and even that decision didn't help our guys out. That would have rested a little bit better on my heart and a lot of fans' hearts.
Yeah, this goes beyond, should Guillorme have done everything he could to hit the ball, or was the call the right move or not? I think this goes beyond that conversation in terms of how Wash handled that.
And to be clear, he should have done everything. Step across that bag, dude. Do whatever you can. Do an Eric Ibar and throw the bat. I'm with all the fans that think the same thing. He needs to do whatever throw his body down, lay down. Like he needs to do that, right? However, there is a deeper layer to this, and that was Wash doubling down on, no, the guy was throwing strikes and we needed to get some help. And you were wrong there. You were wrong, Wash.
And again, we go back. He's the right guy for the right situation for these young guys right now. They stink and they need a Ron Washington. but he was also incorrect in that
Yes.
call the other night. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen every day. The Angels are playing the Rangers, 5:05 Pacific time, and you can catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast on SiriusXM with the XSM app. All you got to do is search Angels. Coming up on Locked On Angels, what do we do to help the pitchers throw strike one? Well, Mike and I have some ideas, and we're going to share those with you coming right up.
When you're going to games or you're going to concerts or you're going to events, there's a lot of ticketing options out there. I think the best one, John, is Game Time.
Oh, yeah,
because
absolutely.
They just are really helpful. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money with tickets. And it's not just for baseball, but although I just learned this recently, that they're the authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball. So it makes it easier to get your tickets a lot faster and a lot easier. And they give you all sorts of options, John. I know that you've used it before for sports, but you've also used it for other events as well, right?
I've used it to go to Angel games, and then I saw Dashboard Confessional and Counting Crows at the YouTube Theater down by SoFi Stadium. My hair was everywhere, and Mr. Jones and me were hanging out down at the YouTube Theater that day.
I love Game Time. They have all sorts of different options when you go and you use the app. One of my favorite is the all-in pricing. It's a feature that shows you the total up front, and there's no surprise fees at checkout. You know how that works, right? You're working through and you're like, hey, I got 2 tickets for $15. This is great. And then you check out and it's like $47.
$115?
Right. Game Time doesn't do that to you, which is fantastic. And they have the lowest price guarantee. And if you get the lowest price and then find something cheaper, they're going to credit you 110% of the difference. And then they also have Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets. You need to download Game Time right now. And when you do, use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and we're going to give you, courtesy of Game Time, $20 off your first purchase. So download Game Time today. Get $20 off with our promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Locked On Everydayers, if you haven't done so already, check out Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube and the Amazon Fire TV Channels app. It's got all the news, coverage, opinions, and analysis that you could want from the experts of Locked On, the local experts and the national shows as well. It's free and available everywhere, YouTube, Amazon Fire TV channels. Check it out. It's fantastic. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And speaking of your team every day, the Angels are playing the Rangers on Friday, 5:05 Pacific time. You can catch every pitch of the Angels hometown broadcast on SiriusXM or the SXM app. Just search Angels.
All right, let's talk about that game from last night. The Angels did get a victory 7-2, and that was fun to see because Griffin Canning had his best outing, John. 6 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, 1 earned, 3 walks, 5 Ks through 99 pitches, had 12 swings and misses. John, the key to his success was his 4-seam fastball.
Yeah.
He threw that the most, and it topped out at 95 miles an hour, and his average speed is about 93. Earlier this year, he was around 91, and he was getting hit pretty hard. But what he did last night was great. He had a differentiation in speed from his fastball to his slider and his curveball, and his location was great. He kept the Cardinals off balance. We've talked about that on this show, John. Griffin Canning doesn't have that wipeout pitch. He doesn't have that pitch that ends the at-bat. It's just foul ball after foul ball after foul ball, right? Like Guillorme did in his final at-bat last night as well. That was a great at-bat, by the way, drew a walk. But Canning actually had that last night with his fastball, was able to keep the Cardinals off balance, got a lot of ground balls, a lot of fly balls, and it was, again, his best start of the year, and he got a victory. This is the Griffin Canning that I think we all expected to see, and we're surprised that we haven't seen that. And so I have a question for you, Johnny.
Yeah.
As we look at this team, and this might be me in the hopium, are we just off to a really bad start, and now they're going to get hot? And I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but do you see them getting back to 500? Because we got off to a really bad start, had a lot of injuries. Typically this happens at the end, like July for the Angels. Now it's April and May. So is there a potential that the Angels are getting hot and the bats are getting hot and the pitchers start to get focused and do what they're supposed to do? Is there a potential that we maybe crawl back to 500 if everything starts to work?
I think at some point they're going to get back to 500, but here's my thing, Mike. As we see Canning improving, we see Sandoval improving, we also see Detmers continued to struggle. And so it just seems like people are kind of moving in opposite directions in terms of the pitching staff, the starting staff. I'm also concerned about the fact that we have like Willie Calhoun and Kevin Pillar, these guys doing really good things in the middle of the order. And then we hear like, well, Miguel Sano, he's going to Arizona and he's going to be working his way back. Like, do we bring Sano back and sacrifice the fact that we've got some guys who we had no expectations for? We didn't even know Kevin Pillar was going to be on this team until 2 weeks ago. These guys that are actually contributing, Kevin Pillar, what's he have? 13 RBIs in 12 games or something like that right now. And
having a remarkable start.
Absolutely. So the fact is, I'm concerned about some of the roster cohesion, the roster moves that they're making. Honestly, it comes down to making the best decisions for this team and trying to claw their way back to 500. I mean, look, this is the first series in the American League West that we're going to be having this season. And they've been talking about the fact that the Angels have gone the second longest, I think, in American League history before facing a division rival this far into the season, and they're going to face the Rangers on Friday. So to me, this is a chance to claw back and earn some games within your division. I'm excited and I'm looking forward to these games, but I am concerned about where the roster stands. How long is Calhoun going to be hitting doubles like this? How long is Pillar going to go on this run? All that stuff eventually wears out, right? And so it will be good to get some health back. It's going to be great to have Luis Rengifo back on Friday. We desperately need him in this batting order, so that's going to be great to see. So at the end of the day, I think that they can claw their way back to 500. If it's going to be soon, that's something that I question.
Sure.
Because I see Canning improving, but I also see other areas regressing, and that's concerning to me.
All-Star break? I would say maybe All-Star break. If they do climb back, I could see that happening. I know it's going to take a lot, right? And they have to figure out a lot of things.
Yeah.
They did have that game last night. They always have a game in a series where everything works, right? And last night, everything worked. And it started with Nolan Schanuel's leadoff home run, 4th of the year. The Angels scored 4 runs in that inning. And then Zach Neto in the 6th inning hits his 4th home run, gave the Halos a 5-1 lead at that point. And then Taylor Ward, John, hit his 8th home run in the bottom of the 7th inning. That gave the Angels a 6-1 lead. And then Mickey Moniak, who I was going to critique and say, bro, stop swinging at the first pitch. They know you're going to swing at that. They know you're going to swing at that. And they don't throw him. They throw him garbage pitch every time, and he swings at it. He actually had a really good at bat with 2 outs in the 7th inning, got an RBI single, and made it 7-1 at that point.
Mike, I can't remember the last time the Angels got out to an early lead and then just kept adding on the runs. I went back and looked, and even the game where they went 6-0 against the Guardians, they didn't start picking up runs till I want to say the middle of the game, like the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th. So the fact that they got out to such an early lead, it happened with that leadoff home run, like you said. I wish that somebody would have bunted against
Lance Lynn.
Lance Lynn, thank you, out there. But you know what? He also they did take advantage of some unathletic plays out there.
Yeah.
Willie Calhoun doubled in Guillorme for the 2nd run. Kevin Pillar had an RBI ground out, 3-0. Pillar scored on a wild pitch that made it 4-0. And like you said, those home runs and Mickey Moniak later on really added on. The key performers in this one, Willie Calhoun, 3 for 5, including his 8th double already. Neto, Schanuel, Guillorme, Pillar, Ward, they all had multiple hits in this game. 14 total hits. 10 came with 2 strikes in this one, Mike. And then Nolan Schanuel. This guy is just an anomaly to me because the exit velocity is super low. We talked about his square it up percentage yesterday in terms of the batting data. Just an anomaly. But the fact is, he's a base hit guy, and every now and then he's going to hit that home run. He's going to be able to pull it just right. And he did that against Lance Lynn in that first at bat. He's now has he's got 3 consecutive multi-hit games, which is a career high for him. So the final in this one, 7-2 against the Cards. I know it was not a series win, but at least that they got this last win and they didn't get swept by maybe one of the worst teams in the National League. I mean, I know we're one of the worst teams in the American League, so I'm not trying to throw stones or anything, but it's just good to see the Angels get a win before they head out on the road trip. They're 16 6-28, and they're 6-16 at home. They're headed to Texas, and they're going to have a chance to climb back in the standings in the American League West.
Hey, no matter if your favorite team is in the NBA playoffs or NHL playoffs or not, you can engage by rooting for your favorite team or by using FanDuel, and you can bet and bring home a big win. Right now, new customers like you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, so much more. What I love about FanDuel, Johnny, is that they explain all of the spreads, money lines, player props.
When it comes to this stuff, I get clueless. So
I am very clueless
when I got
too.
FanDuel, it was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, they help you out. So if you want to jump on FanDuel and you're brand new to this, maybe a little bit nervous, maybe a little bit afraid, FanDuel has got you. They clarify and give all sorts of direction and simple direction, which I love. I need that because my brain doesn't take it all in. So you should download FanDuel right now or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook.
Mike, remember a few weeks back that Ron Washington called a meeting to talk about why the Halos have not been throwing first pitch strikes. That was something that Barry Enright came in emphasizing as the pitching coach. We saw a ton of it in spring training, and it was like, hey, this starting staff is looking good. These relievers are looking good. Well, since the Angels went from 29th to 30th in the league, since they had that meeting, they are now sitting dead last. And the reason you want to get strike one is pretty obvious, because once you are 0-1 against the hitter, you have a significant advantage. In fact, let me read the stat for you. The Major League OPS, on base plus slugging, this season after a 1-0 count, so a ball and no strikes, is 788. Compare that with a 589 on base plus slugging after an 0-1 count, so no balls, 1 strike count. The Angels are even more extreme than the league average, Mike. They are the 11th best in the majors after 0-1, and they're holding opponents just to a 574 OPS. And then when they fall behind 1-0, they've allowed an 813 OPS, which is 21st. So on the extreme ends, they're better than league average when they're ahead, and they're worse than league average when they're behind.
That's why it's so important that this young staff gets strike one. So what happened after the meeting? Well, as you pointed out, they went from 29th to 30th. They got worse.
They got worse.
Now, Enright said that some of the pitchers opened up about their fears of getting hit by being so aggressive in the strike zone. However, the ask of getting strike one isn't an ask of being in the strike zone with every single pitch, right, Johnny?
You're telling me that they're afraid of getting hit as in the bat hits the ball, not like that kind of getting hit. Right.
But it's so interesting that they're afraid of that, but they're not being asked to throw in the strike zone all the time. They're being asked to get strike one,
right?
Even if it's a swing and a miss. And maybe
or a foul ball.
Pitch. Maybe it's a good pitch that they swing at that's outside of the zone, and the stats really back it up. So what do they do now? Now that they've gone from 29th to 30th and they haven't improved, well, Wash said, we've got to do the work to make it happen. We're talking about it every day. We're going out and we're trying to do it every single day. I can't give you a timetable when it's going to kick in, but it's part of our mindset. And at some point it's going to kick in. And if it doesn't kick in as fast as we want, we're going to have to be okay with that. We're just going to see what happens and continue to remind the team to do that. So Johnny, you and I put our heads together and decided we're going to put on the pitching coach hat and say, what would we do? So let me start with just a quick thing of what I think would do. I saw this on social media recently, a manager, a coach of a baseball team, young guys that are in there like 12, 13 years old.
Okay.
They were running the bases, but they were not clipping the side of the base. They were hitting the full bag. They weren't running at an angle like Mike Trout, right?
Right. I was just going to say they weren't Trout. They weren't running the bases like Trout. I love that.
So what he did is he grabbed all of their cell phones and he put it on the middle of the bag at first base and left the corner open and said, now I want you to run the bases. And guess what, John? They hit the corner every single time.
That's hilarious.
So maybe there's an incentive for these Angel pitchers.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's cash bonus or a night out, right? But I think the more practical incentive is, how about we do what we do in basketball? Like, you got to hit 10 free throws before this practice is over, right? And I think really simple, boring, fundamental baseball comes from simple, boring, fundamental practice. And so I would have my pitchers face live hitters, and I would say to them, like, you've got 5 batters and you have to get strike one on all of these batters, and you need to pitch to them like you're pitching in a game. And if you can't do it, then you're going to get another batter until you can get 5 in a row. So that's what pitching coach Mike Frisch would do. What would John Frisch do?
So Mike Frisch, pitching coach, is going to wear out all his pitchers before they can actually get into a game. You can't.
We're 16 and 28, Johnny.
yeah. It doesn't matter at this point, right? Let's we got Davis Daniel up with the team now. Let's get him in there to throw some innings.
He's our boy.
That's right. Listen, Mike, here's my consideration when it comes to throwing strike one. And like you mentioned, it doesn't have to be in the zone. It could be a swing and miss. It could be a foul ball, or yes, it could be in the zone. But here's what I've noticed that the Angels do well, and this is when things go well. I'll take Reed Detmers, for example. That guy throws his curveball on strike one sometimes, and he gets guys to let it pass them right by because maybe they're expecting the fastball, and maybe they don't want to swing at a curveball on strike one, pitch one, because they don't want to end their at-bat so early, especially on an off-speed pitch. They're sitting on something that they can hit. And Griffin Canning's curveball is good. It's not something that's going to get hit around. So my opinion is here, Mike, that the Angels starters can throw their best pitch on pitch one. I know that they were trying to get away from that because it kind of shows their hand before they can really use their best weapon, maybe in a 2-2 count or a 1-2 count, right? But sometimes I think if they're struggling to get strike one, throw that curveball in there. Throw that Patrick Sandoval really good changeup in there sometimes because, yes, they're either going to foul it off, it's going to be a strike, or if they make contact, it's not going to be very good contact. And the fact is, I think they were emphasizing fastball pitch one, fastball strike one. And I think that's what they were emphasizing for a while. And you saw that with Detmers. I mean, I know he was around the edges of the zone, but now he's brought that fastball into the zone, and guys are sitting on it, and they're waiting on it because the league adjusts, and the Angels have to adjust back. So I don't have a problem with them maybe sometimes showing their best weapon, whether that's the curve or the slider or the changeup. If it helps them get to strike one and take advantage of that OPS, which is, again, very extreme in favor of the Angels, I'm all for it. And I understand that you don't want to get hit around, but I don't think hitters are anxious to hit your best stuff, especially when they want to work a count, they want to work a long at bat, and they want to get on base and they want to do some damage. So I think the Angels are in a position where they can use their best weapons to get strike one.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. The Angels play the Rangers on Friday at 5:05 Pacific time, and you can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. You can connect with Mike and I there. You can also hop on over to today's show on YouTube. Hit that like button because it puts our show in front of Angel fans who might not know about Locked On Angels. You guys are really helping us out with that. It's really awesome. Mike, we even had a Giants fan subscribe. How about that? They're not bitter about 0-2 at all because they've won 3 since then. So that's okay. Hey, what do we have on deck for Friday's show, Mike?
It's Fan Mail Friday, so we'd love to hear from you. So get at us. You can comment below if you're watching on YouTube, or you can send us a direct message on social media or comment on social media, and you can call us. There is a voicemail line in the episode description. We would love to hear from you. Fan Mail Friday is tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Looking forward to hearing from you and answering your questions on tomorrow's show. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Friday.
Don't make excuses for that pitcher. He was throwing strikes. No, he wasn't.